Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our very first Improving Talk sessions of 2025. We are very happy to start the year with such amazing content. Are you ready to take charge of the next steps in your career with our recruiting month? My name is Armando Lopez, and I am thrilled to welcome you today. And now let's talk a little bit about Eric Waldo, our guest of honor. He is a recruiter at Improving who focuses on hiring corporate and technical positions across the United States and Canada. He's been at the company for almost 4 years. Eric loves connecting with people, helping them find success in their careers. In his spare time, he enjoys lifting weights, running, cooking, and spending time adventuring outdoors with his wife and rescue dog. He also loves live music, horror movies, and playing video games with friends. I am very honored to welcome him today with his webinar, Rethink, Refocus, Rebuild, How to Lead Your Career Transformation. As you know, transitioning to a new career can feel overwhelming, but it's also an opportunity for growth and reinvention. Through actionable advice on updating your resume, optimizing LinkedIn, networking effectively, and acing interviews, this session will help you gain the tools and confidence to take your next steps. Pretty cool, right? And now, before we start, I encourage you to use our Q&A feature so you can ask him questions during his webinar, and I'll make sure he gets them at the end in the Q&A section. Now I leave you with Eric Waldo. The microphone is yours, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you for the introduction, Armando. And I'm really excited to be here. So I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to spend their lunch hour with me. And a lot of us have been thinking about making a career change or moving into a new job as part of their New Year resolution. So I think this is a great time to talk about this. And before I kind of get into the meat of the presentation, I want to share a little bit more about my experience, tell you about my journey so you understand where I'm coming from. And the best place for me to start is just telling you a little bit about my experience. So I kind of started out my career in sales and marketing, working for a vacation rental startup company in Austin, Texas. And I was doing that for about 4 years. And after doing that for a little while, I started thinking about doing something different. There were some things that I enjoyed about it, but I wasn't sure. I was looking for a new job, and I wasn't really focused in that. But I ended up getting a contract opportunity working at Indeed as a recruiter. It was a 6-month contract. They had a training program. I was excited to try something new, so I took that. And then my wife, she had been working hard in her career, got an opportunity to get a promotion. But in order for her to take that promotion, we'd have to relocate to Houston, Texas. So I decided, hey, I'm not really sure what I want to do with my career at this point. I'm just starting this recruiting thing. It's a contract. There's no guarantees, and I don't want to hold you back. So let's make the move to Houston and see what happens. And this is my last day over here with my Indeed team. A lot of great people there. But I actually ended up landing another job first, right when I got to Houston, launching a co-working office. And that was basically using all of my prior sales and account management experience that I had been doing virtually in coordinating teams and putting that to where I'm going to be face to face with people. And I was excited about that challenge. And that was in 2019. And we launched the co-working office in February of 2020. And I think everybody kind of remembers what happened in February 2020. That's really when COVID kicked off and everything shut down. So that was a terrible time to open a co-working office. To add to that, my situation was unique because my wife was diagnosed with leukemia at the same time, and she went to the hospital. She stayed there for several months, and she had to get a bone marrow transplant. So, I didn't know what was going to happen with my life, and I decided that I couldn't work in a position where I was going to be face to face with people, with my wife being immunocompromised and her dealing with all of what she was dealing with at that time. So I decided to take a step back. I resigned from my role and decided to focus on helping her recover. And luckily, she recovered pretty quickly. And that gave me a lot of time to think about what I wanted to do in the next step of my career. And this time around, instead of just jumping from one thing to the next, I wanted to be more intentional about it. And I was unemployed for 9 months, and I had a lot of time to think about it. It was a tough time during COVID to find a job. And I decided, hey, I really liked what I was doing at Indeed. I didn't really get to fully follow through with that in becoming a recruiter for a long term. And when I was working at Indeed, they gave us a T-shirt that said, "I help people get jobs," and I really liked that. So I decided to dedicate myself to that. And part of that was me updating my resume, updating my LinkedIn, targeting things as much as possible, and preparing for interviews so that I could be successful because I knew that I didn't have a lot of experience as a recruiter. And this is something that I was going to have to convince people I could do. So, with that said, I'm here at Improving. I ended up fulfilling my goal and becoming a recruiter. And I did it with not so much recruiting experience. So, keep that in mind. Now, for this next slide, I like these pictures because, and I'm using these images because they're kind of representative of traditional career paths or career paths that you need a lot of specialized training or specialized education. You can't just be a lawyer without going to law school. You can't just be a pro football player without having played the sport before. Same with being a doctor. I feel like when we're growing up, our parents or people at school ask you what you want to do when you grow up, and oftentimes we gravitate towards paths that are very clear, and these are representative of that. But the truth is, it's not the same for everybody, and everybody isn't a lawyer, everybody isn't a doctor. There's a lot of other types of jobs out there and a lot of other types of careers. You could have gotten a degree in marketing and go in a bunch of different paths. There might be some set path for you to follow, but it's not as distinct as these careers. And sometimes people endeavor to do these things. They start going to law school or and endeavor to be a doctor, and then they figure out they don't really want to do that. So the truth is, we're always changing as we grow older. Our interests, our needs, our ambitions, they're always evolving. And it's very normal and very common to change careers. From the research that I've done, on average, people change their careers 3 to 7 times throughout their entire lifetime. And if other people have done it and I've done it, I know that you can do it too. So this is how you're going to make it happen. Uh, so it's really time to rethink your approach, refocus yourself, and rebuild your career. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about coming up with that vision. We're going to talk about refocusing your personal brand and then rebuilding that confidence so you can knock out those interviews. And the one thing I want to mention before we go any further is that this is really important. There are people out there that are willing to help you, but only you can decide the path that you want to follow, and only you can be the one that moves your feet to walk that path. So keep that in mind. You have to be the one that puts in the work. There are people that are going to support you, but you got to be willing to put in the groundwork to move things forward. So the best place to start with a career transition, and where I kind of started with my career transition, is by creating a vision for yourself. And when it comes to creating a vision, you want to be as specific and direct as possible because this is going to help you identify as many opportunities as possible, and it's going to help you really qualify things. You got to think about the whole job search process. You're not just looking for any job; you're looking for the job that's going to help you move forward and start this career and give you that right opportunity, start things off on the right note. So you might ask, like, why are there a bunch of cars here, Eric? And the reason why is there's something called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. And that's where once you become aware of something, you start to notice it more. And I use the example of cars because all these cars kind of look the same. They're all SUV crossovers. If you go out on the road, you're going to see a bunch of cars that look very similar. And if you look for a job, there's tons and tons of jobs out there. And a lot of them look very similar, right? But you have to spend the time to really qualify and understand what you want to do. And when you identify those things, you're going to start to see it more often. You're going to start, it's not to say in this example that, if you start saying like, hey, I want a Ferrari, you're going to start, Ferraris are just going to start to appear. It's more that you're going to be aware of it. So when it comes to your job search and your career, because you've been intentional about identifying what you want, you're going to be able to see job descriptions that might not be as straightforward, might not have the same job title. That you're going to be able to identify, hey, this is something that I actually want to do. This is going to be something that's going to position me well and help me move forward in my career transition. But as part of this career transition, you could say, hey, I want to become a software engineer because they make a lot of money. Maybe that's your justification for doing that. But you want to think about it more than just that. It's not always just about money, and it shouldn't be, because you could be absolutely miserable and have as much money as a software engineer makes and hate yourself and hate your life, and that's not what you want to do. So you got to think about the responsibilities and challenges that you're going to be taking on a daily basis. You got to think about what you're going to be doing. And then also you got to think about, not only those challenges and responsibilities, but you also got to think about the things that you're going to be willing to tolerate. And what I mean by that is there's always some aspect of a job that you might not enjoy as much. There's no perfect job where everything is sunshine and rainbows. Like there's always going to be something that you might not like as much. You have to identify what you're willing to tolerate, because you're moving yourself intentionally into a role where you're going to have to tolerate something. So if you want to be a software engineer but you hate sitting down at a computer, that's probably not a good career path for you. That's a pretty extreme example, but that's where you really have to figure out what you're willing to do, what you're willing to tolerate in a new career. And then from there, it might not matter at all, but or think about what industry you want to work in. For some career paths, for some types of jobs, it might matter. Maybe you want to be in healthcare. Maybe you want to be focused in jobs and work on for companies that focus on the environment. Does that even matter to you? Maybe you just want that. Hey, I'm going to be becoming a marketing manager, and I could work anywhere. And then also, you want to think about where you see yourself in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. It's not to say that when you're coming up with this vision, you're going to be married and tied to that for your entire career moving forward, but you want to have an idea of what this looks like, because when you're getting that initial job for whatever company you're working for, you want to be able to ask yourself, is this the right job for me that's going to position me to achieve those goals in the long run? And how can I be intentional about doing that? And that's why that's important. And then continuing that career vision, you got to think about your values. What do you value out of the work that you do? What do you want to get from the work that you do? Do you want opportunities? Do you want to work in a position where you have unlimited creativity? It's all up to you to create something. Or maybe you want to just be told what to do and complete tasks, and that's what you enjoy doing. Maybe you want to be in a leadership role, or maybe you just want to be managing relationships. It's different for everybody. The other thing, too, when it comes to values, is you want to make sure that there's some alignment with the work that you're doing and your personal values. If you're really passionate about the environment and animals, then you probably don't want to work for a food processing company, because they're going to be clashing with your values and what's important to you. So you got to think about that. And then also you got to think about the type of lifestyle that this new career is going to provide you, what you're best suited towards. And, a lot of us like that 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday schedule. It's not always for everybody. And then you also got to think about, as part of your career transition, are you going to have to make sacrifices? Are you going to have to work nights some days in order for a while to get you in a spot where you're working a normal kind of day schedule? Or are you okay with that? And then salary or contract, do you want to do those contract roles, or do you feel safer with a salary role? All of these things are important to you, and you have to consider everything here before moving forward with your career transition. And then you also want to start thinking about the obstacles that are going to be in your way while you're following that path. And it's not to say that you want to be discouraged by them. It's that you want to be aware of them so that you know how to navigate and overcome these challenges moving forward so you can achieve your goal. So some of one of the most common challenge that you're probably going to face if you're transitioning careers is that you're not going to have enough experience. That could be technical skills, it could be soft skills, or it could be industry related. Whatever it is, you might not have that experience. That's going to be a common challenge that most people face in a career transition. It could also be education. Maybe you need to go back to school to get some of those skills or learn more about the industry specifically. Maybe you've been working in hospitality and you're looking to transition into healthcare, and you don't know anybody in the healthcare industry, so you don't have the right connections to help you bridge that gap. Or maybe you're working out in the middle of nowhere now that a lot of us are working remotely or hybrid, and you're not in the right city or the right place for as many opportunities where you want to be career wise. Or maybe you're going to have to make, maybe you're not able to make a lateral move compensation wise, and you have to take a step back in pay in order to take a few steps forward in the long run. Or maybe you have kids or other family obligations that makes it difficult for you to transition careers. These are all things that are specific to you and things that you're going to face and you have to think about. You have to be aware of them. But if you have that broader goal and that vision for what you want out of your career, you're going to be able to overcome all these things. And this is how you do it. You got to focus on coming up with these strategies and executing these tactics. And by coming up with your career vision, you're already doing a lot of self-assessment. You're doing a lot of research. You're thinking about things a lot, and you're starting to identify what you don't know and what you can bring to the table in a new career. So you're identifying these skill gaps as well as the transferable skills. You're going to identify the learning and education that you need to bridge those skill gaps and reinforce your resume. And then you're going to start working on your personal branding and marketing and building up your network to build a team of people that you respect and that support you in your endeavors here. And then you're going to follow through with all these things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about most of these things. We're going to talk about tailoring your applications, preparing for interviews, doing some cold outreach. We're not going to talk so much about volunteering, mentorships, portfolio, because that's more specific to certain types of jobs and what you might need. But these are the things that you're going to have to do to make your career transition a reality. So let's start talking about refocusing your marketing, and the best place to start is with your resume, because that's what that is. It's a marketing pamphlet, if you will, to that you use to grab that hiring team's attention, and it's a tool that you can reference during the interview process. So it serves two purposes. It's not just a piece of paper that you use to apply to applications. It's going to help lay that groundwork for what you're going to talk about in the interview. And what I suggest people do is that they create a master resume with all of their experience, all of their skills, even if they feel like it's not relevant, because you never know. There might be that one-off job that you're applying to that you actually have some related experience or industry experience or whatever it may be. And you don't want to spend a lot of time rethinking about what that was like. If you have a master resume with everything that you've done on it, all of your accomplishments, you're going to be able to just tailor things much easier moving forward. So if you put in that initial time and effort in creating that, it's going to help you in the long run. And then you might ask, what do you do with a resume? Like what's the intent behind the bullet points that you're writing? And the truth is, you're really trying to highlight your accomplishments and highlight quantifiable results. You're not trying to just repeat a job description of yourself, like what you did on the job. You're trying to emphasize what set you apart, what you accomplished. And this can be difficult to do sometimes. I recognize that. Not you don't always have access to the metrics or results that you've the impact that you've had, but you have to think about as many things as possible that can position you as a strong candidate for whatever job you're applying to. The example I use is when I worked at Indeed as a recruiter there. I remember a resume distinctly that it was for a warehouse worker, and one of the bullet points they had on there was put boxes on conveyor belt. Well, it's great that they were able to do that, but I don't know, like you could have maybe been putting one or two boxes on a conveyor belt an hour, and that's honestly not that impressive. So really, in that situation, like how many boxes did they put on the conveyor belt? Did they figure out a way to put more boxes on the conveyor belt and share that with the team so it was more efficient? Do they know how their efforts putting boxes on a conveyor belt contributed to the company's revenue? You got to think about those things in creating the bullet points that you create. But then when you're doing a career transition, you also got to think about how can I write these things to highlight the fact that I have transferable skills. Let's say you've been working in customer service and you're applying to a sales job. You might not have resulted in selling things. You might have been selling products throughout your career so far, but you are building relationships with people. So you can position that and write bullet points in that way to show that you can build connections with people, you can manage relationships, and that's something that's transferable to a sales role. You got to think about all of your bullet points on your resume that way and tailor it to the career that you want. And Nowadays, when I was doing this before, there were some AI tools, and I did use that to help position my resume to uh, recruiting roles. There was a tool called Resume Worded, and it helped with my resume, it helped with my LinkedIn profile. I used that because I wanted to try to be as precise as possible. Nowadays, we have Chat GPT and other tools at our disposal that we can use. And I recommend that you just use it as a starting point and as a guide. Don't use it as something that you're just going to copy and paste, because you tell it, your experience. You want to use it as like a sounding board. You want to use it, have it ask you questions, have it help you craft those bullet points. But only you know what you accomplished throughout your career. Only you know what you're confident in talking about in an interview. And you shouldn't put anything on your resume that you don't know anything about or that you don't feel confident talking about in an interview. So you should use it as a starting point to make it easier, but you shouldn't use it as a copy paste source of truth. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But before I go any further, you should also ask your friends, former colleagues for some advice on what they think of your resume. The reason being is, they might think of things that you might not have thought of that you've accomplished throughout your career, or also getting that extra set of eyes can help proofread your resume. And another thing is, whenever you're proofreading a resume, read those bullet points out loud. Only help It helps with readability, but also helps you identify errors easier. So with that said, you got to target your resume. Now that you have that master resume with everything that you've done before, it's going to be very easy to target a resume to a job description and an application. And the key thing here is, I don't want you to think about targeting your resume as just using a keyword salad. Like, hey, I got all the keywords from the job description. I put that on my resume, and that's all I need to do in order to target a resume to a job. And really, what you want to do is you want to read the job description carefully, and you want to identify what's most important to that company. Like, what are they trying to accomplish? And how does this position that you're applying to play a role in that? And you want to use similar language and keywords that are on that job description, but you want to use that intent. Like, what do they want out of the employee? What are they trying to achieve? And you want to try to highlight that where you can as much as possible. And then the other thing is, uh, in this process, when you're targeting your resume to a job, you can use a tool like ChatGPT to help you tailor it. You can ask it, hey, this is my resume now. This is the job description. How tailored is this? How close is this to this application? Would I be considered a strong candidate? Ask it those questions. It will come up with suggestions for how you can modify your resume. But then again, don't just copy and paste what it says. Don't just put a keyword salad on there just for the sake of having it on there. You have to put things on your resume that you're going to be able to back up in the interview. Because a resume, you might be able to fool the recruiter, you might be able to fool the ATS, you might be able to get through the door, but you're not going to get the job if you can't get through the interview process. So the other reason why we start with the resume first is because you're going to be updating your LinkedIn profile as the next part of your rebranding. And it makes it a lot easier once you have an updated resume and a tailored resume to do that. And the LinkedIn functions as not only like a virtual resume, but also a universal cover letter, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it's also a professional social media platform, for better or for worse. And what you're trying to do with your LinkedIn profile is you're trying to drive as much traffic as possible and as much visibility as possible to that by editing it in a way that recruiters and other people are going to find you. And the best way to do that is to take your transferable skills and your knowledge and your new experience and education and put that on your LinkedIn profile just as you would a resume. So populate all those fields that you would have on a normal resume in your LinkedIn profile. Make it easy for people to find you. I can't tell you enough. As a recruiter, I come across LinkedIn profiles all the time, and that's our primary tool of finding talent. And it says, software engineer, but I have no idea what technologies you've been using most recently. So I have no idea if you're going to be a good fit for this particular role, because they're looking for someone with this experience, but I have to guess about what what actual experience you have because there's not enough information on there. You don't want to be one of those people, especially if you're transitioning into a career. You want to build the strongest case for yourself. And then in addition to that, it's a social media platform. You want to make it easy to connect with people, and you want to show that you're invested in your career transition. You don't want to just be somebody that has a LinkedIn profile, it's there, has a resume, but you don't exhibit any effort beyond that, because there's going to be people that are doing more than just that, and those are going to be the people that are going to have more success in finding a job. You can find a job if you do the bare minimum, but it's going to take a lot longer and it's going to be a lot harder to do it. So some of the things that you can do on LinkedIn to show that you're invested in career change are, engaging with content related to the field that you're transitioning in, connecting with people in the space. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. And then also creating your own content, sharing your insights, sharing your learning. The idea here is not everybody's going to read this, not everybody's going to see this, but if there's a chance that somebody does look at it and you have nothing on there, you've missed that window of opportunity for the person that did actually take a look. So you want to create as much opportunity as possible in your career transition, and that's why you're putting this effort in to do this. In addition to that, by putting in the effort to learning things, engaging with things, creating content, you're enabling yourself and positioning yourself to be able to answer questions in the interview process, showing yourself to be invested in the career transition you're looking to do. Now, with LinkedIn, there's this about section. It used to be a summary section. That is basically where you can create a universal cover letter for your career transition. And it's not a place where you're just saying like what you've done for work. I'll tell you, as a recruiter, somebody in the hiring space, if they're looking at your LinkedIn, if they found you on LinkedIn, they're probably going to know already what you did for work. They're looking at that for more information. So it's more than just what you did for work. This is your opportunity to talk a little bit about your prior experience, but also put it into your own words what your transferable skills are, what you've been learning, to exhibit passion and your interest in this career transition. I'll probably say this several times throughout this whole entire presentation. People aren't just hiring the people with the most qualifications. They're hiring people that are invested, that are engaged. They're hiring people that are coachable, that can learn, that can be a good part of the team. So this is also your opportunity to highlight what makes you a good part of a team, what makes you stand out from other people, and why are you making this career decision now. So you want to try to frame it in a way that when people read this, they're excited to learn more about you. So part of the reason why you spend so much time updating that LinkedIn is because you're going to be drawing attention to it and you're going to be reaching out to people. Part of what you could do is like make a post and broadcast to your network and say, hey, I'm making a career transition. I'm looking for a job in this space. Can you help me? And some people might reach out to you and offer to help you, but some people won't. And that's where you want to start to initiate connections and conversations with people to create more opportunity for yourself. You want to tell people how they can help you and increase their awareness of the fact that you need help. Now it's tricky because, and the other thing too with initiation is that it might seem scary to reach out to people. You might fear rejection, like, hey, what if this person doesn't respond? What if I don't hear anything back? What if they ignore my message? Um, it's okay. And I'll tell you, it's about you trying to do everything that you can do to create an opportunity. And that's where you're putting your best effort to make that happen. And only you can do that. And by leaving no stone unturned, you're doing the best that you can. And you don't want to be afraid of doing that. And people do it all the time. So it's okay to do it. Part of what you're going to be doing when you're networking virtually is reconnecting with people that you've worked with in the past or went to school with in the past. When you reconnect with them, you don't want to just send them a message and say like, hey, we haven't talked in 5 years. I'm looking for a job. Can you help me out? You don't want to start there. You want to start planting those seeds and re-engaging the person, learning more about where they're at right now in life, actually genuinely being interested in with them and about them and where they are. So if you know somebody, reach out to them and just say, hey, it's been 5 years. We haven't connected in a long time. I remember working with you at this place. Really enjoyed it. You know, I have lot of good memories there. We'd love to just touch base and see how you're doing. Start building those relationships, building those conversations, and then start to talk about where you might need help or see where you can help them. You don't want it to be a transactional relationship. And then, you want to keep it simple. And then when you're connecting with people that you've never connected with before, you want to send a message and you want to tell them why you're connecting. You don't want to just be like, hey, there's somebody that's a software engineer. I'm going to hit connect. And I'm just going to connect with as many people as possible. That's not helping you network. You're just building your connection count on LinkedIn. If you actually want help, connect with them, send them a message, say, hey, I've seen you're very engaged with the community, love your content, love to stay in touch, and then follow up with them. Maybe you can set up a meeting for 10 minutes and just learn a little bit more about their experience. That's networking in a nutshell. And then if somebody's willing to help you, you have to do the work. Like you can't expect people to do all the work for you. You got to put in the effort. If they connect with somebody that has a job opportunity, follow through with that because you're trying to build reliability and trust with people. And then part of what you're also doing, and part of the reason why you update your LinkedIn is that you're going to be doing some in-person networking. And if you have a LinkedIn profile, that just makes it easier to stay in touch with people and stay connected. And there's going to be a lot of events, meetups, conferences, things that you can attend. You got to do research. You got to figure out what those things are. What I want to emphasize is that not all those events, not all those networking meetups, not all those things are going to be right for you, and that's okay. If you've never done it before, going out of your way to just expose yourself to different types of things is important. You're going to find out by going to these things what works for you, what doesn't. And if you don't know where to start up a conversation with somebody, you're afraid of that, just tell somebody, hey, I've never been to a networking event. Like, what has your experience been so far? Like, what are some of the things some of the places that you've been that you've really enjoyed? It's an opportunity to not only connect with people and kind of broadcast that you're looking for a job or looking to do a career transition, but it's also your opportunity to uh, learn the lay of the land, learn the environment, learn about more opportunities to network and connect with people out there. So you want to be genuine when you're connecting with people. You don't want to just say like, hey, I need a job and then leave it at that. Yeah, one of the first questions that we usually ask people, at least in the United States, is like, what do you do for work? A lot of people don't really like that question, but if that's something that comes up, you want to go beyond that. You don't want to just talk about work. You want to talk about things, find ways that you can relate with each other. And that's where when you're building real relationships based on common interests, you're essentially planting seeds and you're building a team of people that have your back. You're planting seeds and letting them know like, hey, I'm looking for a job, but this is more than that. I really enjoy spending time with you. I love your advice. I love connecting with you. Let's continue this. And when you're doing that, people are more willing to help you. More people are more willing to help you than just, hey, I met you for the first time. You say I need a job, and then we never stay in touch at all. You're going to be forgotten. But if you start to build those relationships and continue to invest in them, they're going to keep you top of mind whenever they hear about something through their network. And that's where it's important for you. If you attend in-person networking events, you want to follow up with people that you connect with there. Connect with them on LinkedIn, send them an email, thank them, be specific about something you enjoyed hearing from them, something that you relate to them about when you're meeting with them, and just leave it open ended. Say, we'd love to stay in touch. See you again at the next one or another time. And then for some people, you want to connect with them, just grab a coffee, make it very casual, learn more about their experience, how they can help you, what they need help with. You want to be of service to people just as much as you want people to be of service to you. And then also remember, I know there's a lot of context where you're not thinking about being a professional, and that's okay. Like if you're going to a music concert, you're probably not thinking about work. But remember that there are a lot of networking opportunities everywhere you go. It's something as simple as I've heard people get a job, a senior level position in a field that they've never worked in by meeting somebody at a birthday party. So You're always planting seeds, you're always building relationships with people, and you never know where an opportunity might arise. And when that opportunity does arise, you got to follow through with that because people aren't going to help you if you never follow through with what they provide for you. So now that you've got a great resume, you're tailoring resumes to jobs that you're applying to, you've got a strong LinkedIn, you're starting to network, you're getting opportunities to interview. And that's the next part of this whole thing. It's a whole beast in and of itself. You could have the perfect resume, you could have the perfect LinkedIn profile, you could be great at networking, but if you're terrible at interviewing, you're not going to get the job, unfortunately. And I want to just like ask, like, what is an interview, right? Like, there's some general rules and conventions that you probably read out there about how to do an interview. We've all probably done interviews before, and there's some just general. It's pretty formulaic, right, on the surface, right? You just follow the formula, and that's all you're supposed to do. You're showing up, answering questions, and asking the same questions, but it's more than that, and you're going to stand out if you approach it uh, as being more than that. And the way I like to frame it is that it's a performance art centered around storytelling. And the story, it's your story about your career, your accomplishments, and where you see yourself moving forward, and how you fit into the company that you're applying to be a part of, and the job that you're applying to be a part of. And if you just go into the interview just answering the questions and not having any nuance, not having any depth, not very excited, you're not going to get the job. They're, like I said earlier, they're hiring people that are engaged, that they feel like are interested in the job, feel like they can learn, feel like they can be a good fit as part of the team. It's similar to dating. If you go on a date with somebody and they're just answering your questions, but there's no emotion, there's no excitement, there's no passion. They're going to ask themselves, like, this person isn't really excited to meet with me. Why would I want to go out with them again? Why would I want to take my time and do that again? Same thing with interviews. If you go to the interview with no energy or engagement with it, they're going to think about that of you, and you don't want that to happen. So I really want to emphasize that it's a performance art. It's not a performance art in that you're being fake and manufactured. It's a performance art in that you're putting your best self forward and you're working towards that. And these are the qualities that you're trying to exhibit in an interview. You're trying to bring a positive energy, a lot of you bring some excitement, some confidence to the conversation. I don't want you to be fake. It's not that you have to try to turn yourself like up like 20 notches just to do well in an interview. But really, you have to have some sort of engagement. It has to go beyond, I just want a job because I need a job. I know that's the way it is for most people, but it has to go beyond that because that's the baseline that everybody's operating with. And why would they hire somebody that's just operating with the baseline if they're not going to bring their A game to the job? So you want to have energy, you want to have confidence, you want to be excited, you want to exhibit creativity and problem solving in how you answer questions. You want to be positive. We've all had bad work experiences, and you have to figure out ways to talk about those things in a positive light, in a way that you've learned things. Nobody likes being, if you're going into an interview and you're talking about how terrible it was working with your past team and all the problems, then they're going to wonder, hey, if I hire you, are you just going to start talking about problems and be miserable to be around, or that's a question and a concern. So you got to think about how you approach people in the interview and talk about your experiences and frame it in a positive light. So obviously you got to research the company, right, when you're preparing for interviews, but researching the company is more than just checking out the website. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're applying to a job at DoorDash and you go to the website and it's like, what does DoorDash do? They deliver food from restaurants to your home or to your business. And okay, that's great. But if you go into an interview and that's all you know about DoorDash and you're interviewing with DoorDash, that's that's not helping you and it's not really helping them. So when you're researching a company, what that really means is that, and before I go any further, actually, I want to mention this. Even if a recruiter reaches out to you about a job opportunity, if you know what companies it's for, you should research that company before you even respond to that recruiter. You should know if it's worth your time for the conversation. You should learn a little bit about it. See if you really want to do this job. See if it aligns with your career vision before just doing it to do it. Uh, but when you're researching a company, it's really about you trying to learn about the business, learn about the mission, their values, their goals, and their customers. You're trying to learn about all those things, and then you're trying to learn about how that ties into the job that they're hiring for. So by researching things, you're identifying what they're looking for, and you're bringing that into the conversation, into the preparation, and how you're going to answer questions in the interview. You're preparing using that light, not just hey, DoorDash, they bring food to people. Uh, what are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals? And how does this job fit into that? Um, so it's important to do that research. And it's also important to do that because that's going to help you ask questions that go beyond the norm. Of course, asking a question like what the day-to-day workflow is like and what's your management style, those are all important things. Those are basic interview questions that everybody asks. But asking a question like, hey, how does this role really play uh, um, how does this position play a role in the company's bigger goal to achieve this metric? The hiring manager is going to be impressed by that. They're going to be like, okay, this person's really engaged with this. They really want to understand what the goal is here, get more information. And you're also interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. And by doing research, you're coming up with questions that you can ask that align with your career vision to make sure that this job is the right job for you in achieving those goals. So you got to be very intentional about that, what questions you ask, and keeping in mind that it's a two-way street. And then in addition to that, there's no excuse not to practice an interview. You don't want to go in there without any preparation. If you represent yourself as a professional, if you prepared for an interview, if you go in there disorganized, not being confident, not being concise in your answers, and bringing real stories about your experience to the conversation, you're not showing yourself as a strong professional in an interview. So when you're practicing interviews, you can practice with a friend. You can use common interview questions, tailor it to the job description. Think about what they're going to ask you. Think about, especially if you're transitioning into a new career, think about the tough questions they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you like, hey, I know you're interested in this job, but why should we hire you? Because you don't have any experience in this space. You want to think about how you can get in front of that and make a case for yourself. And when you're preparing for interviews, you can do it with a friend. You can use ChatGPT. You can talk with yourself in a mirror. I know when I was preparing for interviews, it was in a virtual environment because of COVID, and I was practicing. I was recording video. I was seeing how I was answering questions, seeing how my body language was working in those interviews, and building confidence in how I was going to answer questions and deal with that as part of my career transition. And then also, when you're doing interviews, you want to pay attention. You want to read the room. If you sense skepticism, you want to double down. We want to try to alleviate concerns. You just want to pay attention to people's body language and understand, what's going on. It's more than just the questions being asked. It's more than you just answering the questions. So you want to pick up on those things. And then finally, there's a tip here that I feel like myself and other recruiters probably would hate, but like part of what you're probably going to be doing is you're going to be applying to a lot of jobs. Some of the jobs might be something that you don't really want. And if you get an opportunity to interview for something like that, um, I would say you should take the interview. And part of that is you never know. You might be skeptical, but by asking questions, you learn more, and it might be something you're really interested in. Also, you get experience interviewing, which is a skill. And the more that you do it, the more confident you'll be when you're actually interviewing for a real position that you're really excited about. So the other thing too is that it's very natural for someone doing interviews in a space that they've never been in before to get imposter syndrome. And it's natural to get imposter syndrome and reaching out to people for help. Uh, You know, you you might feel that way, and that's okay. But I'm going to tell you that you don't want that to be the reason why you don't do an interview or don't feel confident in an interview. When you're breaking into new career, you're going to be bridging that gap. You're going to have that experience gap, and you're going to have to make a case for yourself. If somebody has agreed to interview you, it's because they think you could potentially do the job, and they're giving you an opportunity to build a case for yourself. So have confidence in that and build off of that confidence to come up with the story that makes the most sense to build the most compelling case for yourself and take the most advantage out of that opportunity. And we're kind of getting towards the end here, but one thing I really want to emphasize is that focusing on your mental and physical health is really important as part of this. You could be in different places. You could be unemployed, or you could be currently employed. It's the same. The better you feel about yourself, the more positive you are, that confidence and that positivity is going to help you when you're connecting with people. And it's also going to help you present yourself better when you're interviewing. So if I want to say, like, I know how challenging the interview process is, how challenging the job search process is, how challenging a career transition is. It can be, there's a lot of ups and downs. There's rejection, there's ghosting, there's all these terrible things that happen, and it's not always fun. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, but you don't want to let that tear you down. And if you're taking care of yourself outside of this whole process, you're going to do better. And I always hear, when it comes to people that are unemployed, your full-time job is finding a job. I say, no, that's not the case. That's your part-time job. Part-time is you applying to jobs. You're going to drive yourself crazy if you're doing 40 hours a week, doing a job applications, updating your resume, all that stuff. Apply to jobs, do that, of course. But the other 20 hours that you're doing, that's taking care of yourself, learning something new, connecting with your friends, getting outside, doing some physical exercise, eating well, whatever it is that you do to take care of yourself, you need to do that. And you need to do that because that's going to help you position yourself as a strong candidate. And before I end things here, I just want to provide a few suggested reading opportunities for you here. The book, What Color is Your Parachute, is a very great career book that everybody should read if they're doing this transition. And it's going to be really that book that helps you create that career vision. It has a workbook in it. It's going to ask you those questions that helps you identify exactly what you want, the environment, the type of career. I suggest everybody reads that if they're going through this process. And the book Think Big, that's really about taking action. There is a career emphasis on there, but it's taking action. And your career vision isn't going to do you any good if you don't take any action on it. You can think about it as much as you can, but until you take action, it's not going to be a reality. And then finally, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's not really like a career book, but I put it on here because it's really about a book. It's a book that helps everybody learn about building relationships. And that's going to be something that's important when you're networking and also when you're storytelling during your interviews, and also just helping you be successful in your career across the board. So these are the books that I recommend you read. There's other great resources out there, but I would start here first if this is something that you're endeavoring to do this year. And with that said, Armando, I'm ready for questions and answers.
How old were you when you decided to rethink your career? I think age is always a factor that scares us with making big changes.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I was 30 years old when I was put in this place of, I talked about it, where my wife got cancer and COVID. So that was a pretty monumental moment for me. Um, and I understand where age plays a role into this, because I think I was talking about it earlier, how we all have potential obstacles, right? What I'll say is that you shouldn't let, and it's going to be a challenge depending on how old you are for certain types of positions, but you shouldn't let that be the thing that holds you back if you're trying to transition into something new. Like I said earlier, people transition their careers 3 to 7 times on average throughout their lifetime. So it's normal, and people will do it in multiple stages of life. So 30 is when I really started really being, more serious and intentional about what I want to do career wise. And yeah, so uh, I hope that isn't you don't let that be a barrier if you're concerned about your age, if you want to accomplish something new.
Any advice about joining improving? I love that one.
Yeah. So I think the best advice I could give is, I mean, you can connect with me, you can reach out to the recruiters, right? Um, Improving is a company where we're very involved with the community, the local communities where we operate. So there's a lot of opportunities they host a lot of user groups. There's a lot of opportunities to actually go and meet other people in the industry, but also meet people that work at improving. And I feel like that's the best way if you're able to go locally, to go to some of these events, just to be face to face with people. And we have a great group of people at improving, very friendly, very approachable, and they'll make you feel at home. So you'll get a chance to meet people, see what it's like, and also learn some new things. And that I feel like is the best way to join improving.
If I'm interested in a hybrid approach, meaning that I don't want to lose my job, but I want to start reducing my hours in order to start focusing on personal goals, how do you negotiate this with your current employer without raising a red flag and being fired or being thought of as not being a team player?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question. I think it really comes down to context. Like if I told you that there was one answer to that, I'd be lying. And that's where everybody's in a different situation with their employer. Every employer has a different take on career growth and what that looks like. And if you have to gauge like are they gonna if I tell them like, hey, I'm gonna work less, and are they gonna be okay with that? And the answer for every employer is not going to be yes. You might be fortunate where you are a place where that's going to be okay. The best thing that I would try to do is just try to take if you can't get that opportunity from your employer, you're not afforded that opportunity, try to spend some time learning about something new, or dedicating time to that transition, whatever you're trying to focus on during your lunch hour or during your private time. Schedule like an hour every single day outside of work to work towards that. Those little steps, and I know it can be exhausting because we have all these other things that we have to deal with besides our professional lives. But try to force some time in there if your employer isn't going to be willing to play with you or work with you in your goals. Um, try to do that. And if you are thinking about having that conversation with your employer, be prepared to show that it's not going to affect your productivity and your efficiency. You want to come to that conversation from a place of strength and being like, hey, I can deliver these results. This is how I plan to continue to deliver these results while trying to focus on this and learn these things. And by learning these things, that can help me do my job better and add more value to the organization. That's the case that I would try to make if I was going to have that conversation.
Do you have any advice for people who work 100% remotely for networking? How can I network if I'm away from where I work?
It depends on where you live, right? Like if you're in a very rural area, there probably aren't going to be as many in-person networking opportunities. But like I said, there's there's a lot of stuff going on, right? So if you live close by to a city, even an hour's worth driving distance, you have to be comfortable with that. There are going to be opportunities to go to conferences, events, meetup groups, all of those things. And I'm in Houston, so like there's gigantic commute times, and I actually created a networking group called Side Product Society. I was a part of that for 2 years, and we had people from all over the Houston area attending that. And part of that is just being willing to make a sacrifice as far as commute time, but making the most out of it when you get there. So connecting with people and building those relationships. If you're too far away to kind of go to things in person, there's a lot of online communities out there. I know with tools like Slack and Discord, there's online communities. There's Reddit. There are ways to connect with people and have conversations with people and learn about their experiences other than just networking in person. And then also LinkedIn, of course, there's a lot of people out there posting content, engaging with content. You can connect with people there. And what I would say is if you actually connect with somebody on LinkedIn, um, take your time with it, but see, you be willing to ask people if they're willing to meet virtually and just say, hey, I'm working remote. We'd love to get your advice on your experience, learn more about you, just connect with you, trying to connect with more people and build relationships. Um, there's nothing wrong with that, and you just got to do your best. I know if you're working fully remote, it's hard. You might feel isolated if you're in your office all day by yourself or at home all the time. So try to get out of there as much as you can, and also try to connect with people virtually if that isn't really an option.
How can I grow my connections if I'm an introvert person?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And, I know that it might be difficult, right? If you're not comfortable meeting new people, and going out of your comfort zone. Uh, the thing that I'll tell you is that it might seem like you might be afraid of getting hurt or putting yourself out there, but there's a lot of people out there that are very supportive. So I would say try to go to a networking event, try to put yourself out there, and just be honest with people. Say, hey, I don't really go to these things that often. I get kind of nervous. The more you challenge yourself to get outside of your comfort zone, the less scary it'll be. I'll tell you, when I was part of Cyprog Society, we would have something where everybody would go around in a circle and tell people about themselves, and it's like you're in a room full of 40 or 50 people, and you're put on the spotlight. That's very uncomfortable for some people, but the more times you put yourself in a situation like that, the less intimidating it'll be. And also, like if somebody judges you because you're not as you know you're not speaking as well, or you're scared or nervous, um, that's not something you really want to connect with. You want to connect with people that are going to support you. So there are those people out there. I would just say, um, put yourself in a position where you can meet people, and also just be mindful of your energy. I know being an introvert, that means you need to recharge being by yourself, but you still have to kind of challenge yourself to get out there and try to find a group. That's why I said earlier, not everything's going to be for you. If you find a group that feels very welcoming and encourages people to build relationships, that's probably the best place for you to be, instead of going somewhere where nobody's really welcoming you, feel like an outcast. So try to find a community like that and build confidence by being a part of that.
I want to thank you all for joining us today, but especially you, Eric, for such a great and insightful presentation. It was amazing. And coming up next week, make sure to join us for a Candid Recruiter roundtable as we pull back the curtain on the recruiting process with Nitin Konya from Canada, Mariela Quijano from Mexico, and Tal Phillips from USA. You don't want to miss it. Until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Eric, again.
Thank you, everybody. See you all later. Bye.